Okay. For our first speaker tonight, we have Nic Coombey. Nic's a landscape architect for over 30 years. Nic has increasingly specialised in the management of heritage projects in Dumfries and Galloway. Initially working with the Solway Heritage, he now works with Solway Firth Partnership on a variety of projects that share an inspirational coastline through electronic and printed media activities and events. Nic is currently working on the More Positive Action for a Cleaner Solway project, which works with many partners to tackle the problem of marine litter on our coast. Nic.
Hello everyone, thank you for inviting me to come and speak to you. So as Andrew's mentioned, I'm Nic Coombey from Solway Firth Partnership. Solway Firth Partnership works on both sides of the Solway, so the English side and the Scottish side. And I suppose the clue's in the name, partnership. We like working together and working with others to achieve a better Solway. And as Andrew's mentioned, we've been working on the More Positive Action for a Cleaner Solway project. And really we're championing beach cleaners, volunteers to clean our coast. But what we're really doing is sharing stories. So we're telling stories about what we're doing, but we're also trying to inspire action, get other people to work and do clean beaches, to really just try and get people to grasp the scale of the problem. But also to not feel hopeless, to feel that by working together, either as individuals or as groups, we can achieve and make a difference. So one of the ways that we tell those stories is through media, so that might be through television programs or from articles, or just the stories that we tell each other as we're doing beach cleans. So it's all about telling that and sort of sharing that experience. One of the ways that we've told stories is we've made things up about waste. So two projects in particular. One is the Solway Hoard. You may have seen it. It's been travelling around Dumfries and Galloway. And it was imagining that we were 1,000 years in the future and looking back at a hoard that had been found of plastic objects and what those plastic objects were and why they were there. We've got some booklets in the room through there. So if you want to find out more about that, then please see that. So one of the stories we can tell is about the journey that plastics take. Where does it come from? Where does it go? And who's responsible for it? So these are all questions that people are asking themselves as they're cleaning beaches. Most of the plastics that arrive on our beaches are buoyant plastics, so they've floated here. But it's the currents that bring them towards us. So here we can see the currents that are generally bringing rubbish towards us, and you can see there's a sort of general movement from the south to the north. But when it comes to those really buoyant plastics, then it's really the wind and wave that carries the plastic. So here, this is Burrow Head. And because we've got a prevailing southwesterly wind, then that plastic is being washed into southwest-facing bays. So any beach or bay that faces southwest collects this litter, whereas ones that are facing in other directions are often very, very clean. So it can be quite a different experience depending on where you go on the Dumfries and Galloway coast. In some places, we get what we call sort of historic piles of plastic where it's built up over years and years. And here's a picture of one just north of Port Logan. And you can see it. What hits you first is all those really big plastics, those durable plastics that have not rotted away and have just built up over time. And often the thing that hits you first is that a lot of it seems to be commercial fishing waste. But then when you take a closer look, you can see that we've got road cones, we've got a rocking horse, and when you start homing in between, then you find that there's lots of other smaller things. one of the most common finds that we get on beaches is plastic drinks bottles. So it's a really common find. And plastic drinks bottles actually, well, they float if they've got their top on. It doesn't matter if they've got water in or not, they still arrive on our coast. But if they don't have their top on, then it's made from PET, so that just sinks to the bottom. So we just get bottles with the tops on, or we get the tops. And as the plastic slowly degrades, particularly in sunlight, then it breaks into smaller and smaller parts. So it's not that it ever disappears, it just becomes smaller and smaller pieces. And when it does break up, then it sinks to the bottom of the sea. Or if it breaks up on a beach, then more than likely then the next high tide will wash it back out and it will sink to the bottom of the sea. So we're only seeing a very tiny proportion of the plastics that are going into the oceans. We're seeing those floating objects. And when they do break into tiny pieces, sometimes they're caught in certain places. So this is Barloco Bay. There's a corner of that bay that is just a mound of minute pieces of plastic. And this is a mixture of nurdles and broken bits of pieces. And it's just building up into bigger and bigger piles. So one of the first questions we ask, well, where does plastic go? Where does the plastic go that we lose? And there is this amazing website, Ocean Cleanup, and it has a plastic tracker gizmo on it. And you can type in a location. So if we type in Dumfries, assuming we've maybe dropped a water bottle in Dumfries, then it will show you where that plastic might go. It says there's a medium probability that it will reach the ocean. I'll say it's probably more than that. So this is tracking that plastic over 20 years. Now, the truth is that plastic bottle would not last 20 years. But if it was a more durable piece of plastic, then it could have made that amazing journey. It's never done that for me before. So as you saw, it went up the coast of Scotland, across the top. It goes down a wee bit, then shoots across to the Norwegian coast, goes up the Norwegian coast into the Arctic, across to Svalbard. Amazingly, that those poor geese that come down here, we're sending them plastic back. And then down the other side, goes down to Greenland, to Canada, and then back up, and then eventually gets lost in the Arctic. So this is all based on science that they've used to track plastics. And what you'll find, you can spend hours on this, I can tell you. But if we try again from the same location, so if we watch it carefully, so basically anywhere along the coast that it goes, it could get stuck on a beach. And most plastics get washed up on a beach within a month of being lost. But here we could see the potential, and this time it's just lost in the Arctic somewhere. So we can use this to track where our plastics go. And we know from research that it's the Norwegians are getting a lot of our plastic, or a lot of plastic from Scotland. So most of the plastic bottles that Norwegians find on their beaches are from Scotland. So we'll stop playing that, because otherwise we can do it for ages. So where does our plastic come from? Well, so we know from this is a beach clean that's on the Nith, upstream battle that was being carried out by Keep Scotland Beautiful, and volunteers, some of which might be here. There's a wavy person there. There she is, in the hat. Oh, they've both got hats, but you'll work out which one it is. So we find those plastic bottles that are washing down the Nith. They go into the Solway, get washed out into the Irish Sea, which collects litter from all around the Irish Sea, and then anything that's floating is then blown back up onto the Dumfries and Galloway coast. So when we're trying to work out where these plastics come from, we can try and work out whether they're from somewhere nearby or whether they're from a long way away. one of the clues that we can tell is if they've got these goose barnacles growing on them, then we know that they've been in tropical waters, so that we know that they've come from a long way away. As I've said, probably most of the litter that we find is from a relatively close area, because we know that most plastics get washed up within about a month. So it's likely that most of our plastics that come from nearby, and that's certainly the experience from where we can work out. There's an awful lot of plastic that we can't work out either what it is or where it's come from, but we can have a look at other items and we get a very good idea. So here's 4 objects. So these objects have all been found on the Dumfries and Galloway coast, and they're all fishing related. In fact, they're all lobster fishing connected. And each of them has distinctive features about them, which means that we know where they've come from. And all of these have come from a very long way away. So in the top left is a lobster pot entrance, and it's a type of lobster pot entrance that they really only use in Florida. So we know that that's come from Florida, and that's almost certainly been washed into the gyre in the Atlantic, has probably been spinning around for quite a while, and then somehow has been thrown out and has managed to make its way up all the way to the Solway coast. And by looking at that map that we've just seen there, could continue and go all the way around again. The thing to remember is this is high-density polyethylene. It's a plastic that floats very easily, but it's also very, very robust and doesn't break down very easily. So it could carry on doing that journey for an awful long time, but obviously in this case has made it all the way across to us here. The one down at the bottom there, that belonged to Travis Smith from Cedar Island in North Carolina. So that was found on, I think near the Mull of Galloway, just about a month or so ago. Travis Smith unfortunately died in 2020. So again, we don't actually know how long these plastics have been moving around and how long they take to get to us. But that is a label from a lobster pot. So that's an ID for a lobster pot in North Carolina. This one here is a lobster escape hatch. So that in America, on the east coast of America, these are mandatory to be attached to lobster pots, and they let the smaller lobster and crabs out and keep the big ones in, so the big ones don't munch the little ones. So lobster fishermen like that because it means the little ones grow into big ones. They've actually got quite a special gizmo to it, which they have biodegradable rings at the bottom, so that if they lose the lobster pot and the lobster's being caught in it, those rings biodegrade quite quickly, and then the flap opens and falls off and the lobsters can all get out. But of course then the flap floats to the surface and makes its way to us eventually. So that's from Maine on the east coast of America. And then this one at the top here is a bait jar that they use mostly in Nova Scotia. Actually has the address and telephone number of the shop that sells it on it, from St. John's, I think. So that's a bait pot. So they put their smelly fish inside that pot and hang it inside their lobster pot, and that's escaped. And you can see that it's come from a long way because you can see the goose barnacles growing on it there. On these other ones, that almost certainly would have had goose barnacles on, but have probably been sitting on our beach long enough for them to have died and fallen off. And so those are examples of things that have come from a very long way away, probably 4,000 miles and more to come to our coast. But they are the exception. Although once you know what you're looking for, it's surprising how often you find them. You think, oh, well, you'd only find one every now and again. But once you're looking for them, especially these escape hatches, I keep on finding them every beach clean I do now. Whereas before, I'd have probably just stuck them in the bag and moved on. So let's look at things that are a bit closer from home. So these are all connected to drinks. So on the top left there is hot chocolate powder used in Spain and Portugal. And again, we know it's probably come from there because of the goose barnacles on there. So it wasn't someone from Spain who was holidaying in Dumfries and dropped it. it's come from a long way. We get a little bit from the Isle of Man, but not so much these days. So I think there has been a change there. There was probably once landfill sites near the coast and rubbish used to blow on into the sea, but that really doesn't seem to happen anymore. And then, and this, by the way, is on it, it describes how it's completely biodegradable, but not so biodegradable that it doesn't get here first. So I suppose when it comes to thinking about how long things take to come here, if they're light and they're floating on the top, then it's to do with the strength of the wind. So the wind can blow things really quickly, and they really zoom along. Whereas if it's something that's a little bit larger and heavier and maybe a little lower in the water, then they can take an awful lot longer to get here. So for example, I think when we were having the beast from the east, some boy threw a bottle with a message in at Nic Coombey, and I think it was found in Northern Ireland 2 days later. So they really zoom along when you get a bit of wind on it. But we get an awful lot of Irish milk bottles. Milk bottles, I always get excited with milk bottles because they very often have information about very local areas of where they're from. So if it's got a label on, you can work out exactly where it's from. I've forgotten where this one is from, but you can see if they're from Dublin or from Cork or wherever they're from. They can be easily identifiable. And very easily, this is high density polyethylene as well, so long lasting, but easily recyclable. And then the bane of our life is disposable drinks bottles. They come everywhere, and they're hard to identify when it's Coca-Cola or something like that, but water bottles are much easier. So this is River Rock. River Rock is an Irish company. It's actually owned by Coca-Cola. They only produce 100% recycled bottle, but it doesn't matter if it's 100% recycled if they don't recycle it. So we get lots and lots of these bottles on our beaches. But the good news is we might not soon, because in Ireland they have just started the deposit return scheme in February. So maybe in a few months' time, suddenly the number of bottles we get will dry up, or all the ones we'll get will be from Dumfries and Galloway or England. So one of the things that I'd like to all think about is we've talked about where it comes from and how it gets into the sea, but really who is responsible for clearing beaches up? Who is it that we should blame? Or no, it's not a blame game. It's really trying to work out, well, how can we pay for this, or how can we stop this in the first place? You know, is it the manufacturer that's to blame? Is it the company that made or bought the object or sold it? Is it the person that's lost it? Is it the government from where they get washed up? Are they responsible for it? Or the local authority? I mean, actually, currently in Scotland, the responsibility for this is the landowner. So if it's on the landowner's responsibility to dispose of this and pay for it to be removed. But we're very fortunate here. We've got lots of really enthusiastic volunteers who go out and do fantastic beach cleans. We've also got the council that are really, really helpful and take the plastic away. So we're working on it in a sort of local way, but in a global way, it's a much more complicated thing. I always forget the name of the... Yeah. So there is being developed a global plastic treaty, which is looking at ways to try and work out in a sort of global way, getting countries together. It's sort of ground to a halt at the moment, but really it's all about coordination, and it's accepting that really plastic is mobile. It goes across borders. You know, once it's in the middle of the Atlantic, it's nobody's job to get rid of it. The impact is uncertain. Countries aren't incentivized for stopping the plastic from going out because it becomes somebody else's problem. And there's an imbalance to who gets the plastic and who produces it. So all of these things are things that we need to talk about and need to think about more closely. But for us, the most important thing or for me and the volunteers, is to do our bit and get the plastics off beaches, both for people and for nature. And to try and work out ways that we can reuse or recycle as much as we can. Yeah. So that's me. Yes, if we might have time for questions in a minute, but there's a short film which hopefully will go to lead into the next section. The volume of waste and how we dispose of it is a global issue, and one where we're going to have to change our ways. On the Dumfries and Galloway coast, it's particularly apparent with the buoyant plastics that wash up on our shore. Beach cleaners do a fantastic job at cleaning our shoreline, but it raises various questions. Where does the plastic come from? Where does our plastic go? What should we be doing about this problem?
My name's Anna Wilson and I'm a lecturer in the School of Education at the University of Glasgow. And what we're trying to do with this particular project is use items that are found on beaches in Scotland, starting off here in the Solway region, to try and get people to both understand the marine litter problem as it actually is and as it affects our shores, and also to think about what we're leaving on our shores and waters around us and how that might be seen in the future by future generations.
My name's Lindsay Henderson. I'm a mature student, but I believe they call us adult learners on an HNC visual communication at Dumfries and Galloway College. We've had an interesting day on the beach this morning. I was absolutely blown away by the amount of plastic that there was. I was told that there might be a bucket. There must have been 50, this being one of them. All sorts of objects, fairly modern looking things, but a bit rustic, like a domestos bottle, but something I didn't expect, and it's kind of depressed me. A domestos bottle which we've managed to date to 1965, so that's 58 years old. We just can't believe that something like that would exist. Something here with Korean writing on it. No idea what the shape could be. So part of our brief today is to make up a story, and I think this might be ideal because I have no idea what it is. I've no idea how old it is. And if somebody picked this up in 100 or 1,000 years, it could be just about anything. So this is a potential candidate. All sorts of stuff that we've found is obviously just never going to degrade. And I think it's something that everybody should do. Should get out onto the beach and have a look, because you'll be absolutely shocked at the amount of stuff that's out there.
By telling stories about plastic through the Waste Stories project and the Solway Hoard, we enable people to explore these things and look into the future and try and come up with some solutions. The stories demonstrate that either through individual or collective action, we can imagine a positive future. So I think we've got 4.5 minutes left for questions. Is that how, or do you want to move on and do questions at the end? Yes.
Thank you. Amazing talk. Video was amazing too. I actually have 2 questions if it's not too greedy, so apologies if I'm stealing from anyone else. One of these was to do with, you talked about tracking where the plastic ends up, also where it came from. What do you do with this information? Is it just for your own morbid interest, or do you track down the people that use it to blackmail them? My other question is, what do you do with the plastic that you find on the beach? Because if you go and tip it back into landfills, it's very dangerous ending up back in the sea.
Yeah. So first of all, the first question is what we do with the information of knowing where the plastic comes from. For I suppose, you know, we're not trying to blame people, and most plastic, certainly from creels and things, has been lost accidentally. So we're not going to be rushing after them and waving our fists. Although I have contacted a few people where I've been able to work out, particularly boys have numbers on. So we have contacted people, and you'll see through in the room next door, there's a white hat from a building or from a survey people, and I contacted them and asked them where they lost their hat. And they were very apologetic, and they had lost in South Wales. They were doing some hydro surveying, and someone had lost their hat. So, yes, it has limited. Can't really blame or get. Although we have one beach clean group did write to all the fish box manufacturers or fish boxes that they found, and asked them what they were going to do about it, and one gave quite a decent donation to the beach cleaning group. So sometimes it pays dividends. What was the other question? Oh, so when we do beach cleans, usually the rubbish is picked up by the council, and the council takes it to the Eco-Deco plant where it's repurposed, and most of those plastics are then used to as fuel for power stations or cement work. So we're removing it from the environment and making use of it. So I think that's what we're looking into, ways that we might be able to separate the plastics as we collect them and send some to recycling as well, which will be even better. And of course, we also repurpose some of it. So fish boxes are quite useful for keeping things in, and Logan Botanics keeps their dahlias in it, and I'm trying to think who else. An artist has recently asked me to send her, collect them for her, and someone makes handles out of their artisan knives out of it. So it's all sorts of weird and wonderful things. Yes?
I was just going to say that Hamish's brother, Finlay, is Chief Executive of Isle of Man Creamery. So I sent a photograph to him.
Okay, right, yeah. We'll find and get to the... But you can say that we're getting less and less from the Isle of Man, so that's good. Yes?
Hello, I'm Wesley Paxton from Amman. I want to give you 1 or 2 gems of statistics. We are the good guys. National Geographic claimed that of the 10 world's worst polluted rivers, 8 of them are in Southeast and East Asia and drain to the Pacific. And the other 2, it's the Zambezi from Central Africa and the Ganges into the Indian Ocean. So the Atlantic, would you believe, in comparison, it's as clean as a chalk stream. So things could be worse. Thank you for listening.
Okay. Yes?
One of the reasons for that is that the developed countries ship their plastics to third world countries. Leave them to deal with it.
Yeah, that's happening less and less, but it's also to do with having the infrastructure to be able to collect and recycle. So developed countries, actually I think you find that developed countries have those processes in place. Very undeveloped countries, people do reuse things because they just have to. And it's those ones in between that produce and use lots of plastics but haven't got the systems in place to collect it and recycle it. So that, but we're all to blame, I think. So it's a sort of collective responsibility. We need to think about how much plastic we use and where it goes. And now I'm handing over now. Thank you.